from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
With the completion of Labor Day weekend, the unofficial second half of the CFL season is underway. But what a collection of classics we've just seen. Argos quarterback Chad Kelly has a whale of the year, but he's making a whack of money. Is this fair or foul? And as one referee steps away, we debate who was the best man to ever wear the stripes. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. Welcome one and all to the podcast that always offers unfiltered opinions from the CFL's top columnists, broadcasters, and insiders. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Hey, this week it's a TSN visit from a man I say is no stranger to this podcast, no doubt one of the best in the business as an analyst. Glen Suter, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Let's talk some football.
Right on. And folks, don't be fooled by his boyish good looks. Because he hit harder than most for nearly a decade on defense and on special teams in the Hammer. From the Ticats Audio Network and an assistant coach at Laurier, who are apparently doing pretty good. Mike Daly, always great to see you.
Great to see you, Bubs. Thanks for having me again.
Right on. All right, guys, let's go straight to it. Glenn, I'll start off with you. You had the pleasure, I think, of being on the broadcast for two of these games. Mm-hmm. The most exciting Labor Day weekend game was, and why?
Well, I love the atmosphere in Saskatchewan. I can't lie about that. I know it was a sellout in Hamilton as well, or at least read that. So I'm sure it was exciting there and to be in there. The problem with that game, of course, was the Ticats got down so early and then we're chasing points all game. And that sort of takes your crowd out of it. Whereas in Saskatchewan, it was back and forth and it was close. And Jake Dolegala is another young quarterback that, you know, I think you guys would agree that if we can't have enough good quarterbacks, no matter what age they are or what level of experience, and if we just get these young guys keep playing well, it's going to be fun to watch.
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, Glenn. Like, playing in Sask and seeing the amount of, you know, pride that those fans have on a Labor Day weekend, I could only imagine, right? My familiarity is with the Ticats, and those Labor Day games were as close as you can get to playoff atmosphere. But it was awesome watching that opening kickoff with Brett Lowther doing the little squib kick and absolutely lighting that place on fire, right? Because Sask played out of their minds in order to beat a good Winnipeg team, and they needed all those bounces to go their way, and they did. And so I think watching that game, I would love to watch that over again. But Glenn, Bubs, we've been pretty spoiled with how good some of these games have been this year, and to all roll out on Labor Day, that was pretty cool.
You know, Mike and Glenn, the best part about that little squib kick off the top is who the head coach was on the other side and his special team expertise. That was the best part.
Absolutely.
No, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and you know, he's Mike O'Shea always prides himself on the special teams and what he's been able to do and how he cut his teeth here. And Winnipeg does pride themselves on how good their special teams unit is, because it is always one of the tops in the league. And to see that happen, it was just, like I said, Sask had all the bounces go their way, and they needed that for that game.
Yeah, I think when you look at an overtime game where the 2-point convert, which is mandatory, as you guys know, if you score a major, a 2-point convert one way, and then a batted pass by Jackson Ford, who is the grandson of Al Ford, who was a GM with the team and, of course, a great player in Saskatchewan, their history. You put all that in a little package, I'm not sure you can write a better script. To go to overtime, a 2-point convert for the win, and then Zach Pilaros gets his knocked down for a 2-pointer after a bomb to Kenny Lawler. I mean, just you're right, Mike. I think we're being spoiled right now to so many games that are, you know, going down to the final 3 minutes, one possession games, and we're seeing what makes Canadian football great. Some world-class athletes battling right down to the wire.
Well, speaking of Canadian football and the fact that in the last 3 minutes of football and in the fourth quarter, anything can happen, Glenn, you saw it straightforward. Like the Edmonton Elks have to be, who felt probably feeling so good about themselves for 3 quarters of football, have to be going, what happened? What happened in the fourth?
Yeah, well, you know, Winnipeg's gone through it when they played Ottawa that game a few weeks ago. and they came back from 16 with 3 minutes to go. You know, you're on Labor Day on the biggest stage, and Calgary didn't look all that great offensively in the first half. Again, credit to the Elks and the way they were playing them. Trey Ford puts on an absolute show. I'm not sure he can do much more to put them in a position to win, and has become a huge story in the Canadian Football League. But yeah, Jake, you know, they needed that in a big way, the Stamps. They really did, because they've lost a lot of close ones just like that and not finished. This could be a season changer for get them in the right direction.
When you're in games like that as a player and you're, you know, under control for 3 quarters, your team is playing at a very high level, but all of a sudden you feel it slipping a little way, like that things aren't going your way, they're kind of catching up. What does that feel like?
It feels hopeless. It's weird. It's a weird feeling, right? It's not like you're calling plays any different. It's not like you're playing any different. It's just things aren't really panning out the way you want them to. And then they stack on top of each other. The momentum swings are a real thing, right? That is a true real thing that those players are feel. And it's one of these things where it's like, okay, people are talking, trying to hype each other up to climb out of this hole. It's okay, what are we going to call different, right? Everyone's just kind of looking at themselves going, what can I do? But that's almost worse, because then you start reeling and trying to make these plays, and you see what ends up happening. The Elks, you know, they fall apart. And to give credit to Calgary, and especially Jake, that some of those throws down that last drive were unbelievable. The one out to Reggie Begelton on the far side, that deep corner out that he ran, that was an unbelievable throw, right? So, you know, Elks can look back at this game too and be like, we were that close to not having to talk about this. So it is a momentum thing for sure, but I mean, this next rematch is going to be awesome to watch.
Glenn, you talk about the young quarterbacks, and of course, Jake Dolegala, a guy that, again, listed originally as a third-string quarterback. Dustin Crum listed as a fourth-string quarterback, actually, for him. And Trey Ford was like the third-string quarterback here. I know for maybe a lot of the early part of the season, we were saying, oh, my goodness, these backup quarterbacks. Well, it seems like a couple of them are starting to emerge.
Yeah, they are, and it's all about reps. It's all about opportunities, you know, being able to live through some tough times. I mean, you know, whether you're talking about the beginning of Ricky Ray or Danny McManus's career or Jake Dolegala, and I'm not comparing them. I'm just suggesting that at the beginning of your journey, if you make a couple of mistakes and you don't get another opportunity to go and you know, prove that you can bounce back from those mistakes, then you'll never get that opportunity, and you just kind of disappear. But, you know, I think there's got to be some patience. Maybe it helps some of the coaching staffs actually playing these young guys, that it's happening across the league. You know, this is not just one team that's going, man, we got to play this young guy. It just doesn't seem right. This is happening for the majority of the teams across the league. So, you know, and Taylor Powell showed some great moments as well. So, you know, I think, again, it's a bit of a roller coaster when you're playing with a young guy, and the fans are going to go on highs and lows. But the more reps they get, the more comfortable they become. And again, we can't have enough stars at that position.
Mike, I got to ask you a little bit about Trey Ford. I mean, again, as a defensive player, I know, Glenn, obviously you're a defensive player as well too. How do you defend that? Like, I mean, and I say that respectfully. Like, this guy's a freak. Like, honestly.
Yeah, it's tough. It's one of the toughest things to try to game plan for, is a quarterback that can run that effectively and is faster than most of the guys that are out there on defense, right? And not even just faster than the D-line, but faster than the DBs that are out there as well, right? It alters everything conventional about defense. So now you have to take guys out of coverage and try to spy them. And one spy is probably not enough, right? Because the guy you're going to have spy is probably not as fast as Trey Ford is. So it opens up the passing game more. But what you're going to see is, I think this game really opened people's eyes. And it was the old Dustin Crum thing that, you know, Ottawa kind of burst onto the scene with. Now you're seeing teams use two different spies to make sure, you know what, we're going to see how we're going to see how Trey Ford can throw the ball, because we just can't let them run for 100, 150, that type of yardage that Trey Ford put up in that Edmonton game. it's just too backbreaking for that defense. So I'm very curious to see how Calgary will then switch their defensive game plan and say, okay, here you go, Trey, let's see how you can beat us over the top. But he has some weapons out there as well that is, that he very much can, and he has shown that he can get that ball downfield. So it's very tough to game plan for, and I'm couldn't be happier for a guy like Trey Ford and what he's kind of been through this season, and now to see him out there. And, I don't think most of us are surprised that are, outside looking in on this.
Glenn, there was a couple of times I could just hear you, whoa, oh, like on the broadcast. I mean, and I think maybe you're just positioning yourself as a defensive player back in the day, thinking, yourself, like, my goodness, what a move or whatever. Hey, the funny thing is, and I know we said this with Dustin Crum, is that after a couple of games, it came to some opinions that, well, he's just basically backpedaling or in a shotgun to run, thinking to run before the pass. But Trey's got, I think, a stronger arm than a lot of people want to believe, and he can let it fly.
Yeah, no question. And I think he is recognizing defenses, and again, we'll get better with more reps, but when you see the play that he made to Dunbar in Hamilton when it was a full blitz, he recognized it and hit that post for a touchdown. When Calgary on Labor Day yesterday, when they went to full blitz, Edmonton decided to go some of those hit screens and get the ball out of his hands quickly. He's shown he can throw the deep ball. I'm excited about this kid for a lot of reasons. He reminds me, and I'm not making comparisons, but Coach did too, as far as their careers yet, but he reminds me of Doug Flutie and how hard it was to defend Doug Flutie because, you could send tons of pressure. He can beat one guy and still buy time. You can drop in zones. He sits back there patiently and waits for a receiver to open up. It's very difficult. And, again, I love that he's Canadian, and I'm not going to shy away from that. We need to be proud of that. Proud that it's a U Sport kid. It does so much. I mean, Nathan Rourke and Trey Ford have proved and are proving that Canadians can play any position on the field at the pro level. And that's another reason that it's fun to watch Trey do his thing.
Yeah, and Glenn, just to add on that too, right? You talk about the experience of these quarterbacks and getting these guys in there and letting them learn and let them go through some of those roller coasters. Well, a lot of these quarterbacks are in there are American. So now when they're such a young guy and they come here, it is football, yes, but it's still a different game. The timing is different, right? All the spacing is different. So it does take that time to get used to it. But Trey Ford, it's not a different game for him, right? This is what he grew up playing. So he's able to make these throws and these reads, and like Glenn talked about, when they're sending the pressure, he has his hot reads all ready to go. He's used to all this kind of stuff. It's different spacing, different timing. But I absolutely agree, Glenn. Like, he can throw that ball out there. Like, he has as good of an arm as most of the quarterbacks in this league, and it's awesome to watch.
Guys, I've talked to players, I've talked to coaches about this over the years, and I generally get the same answer. It's the next game on the schedule. So that's as good as I get out of everyone. But when I talk to fans, I do seem to get some opinions on this. So I'll throw this to you there, Mike. And you have these Labor Day rematches. In some cases, you get that in the Banjo Bowl, but that's not the case for everyone else. There was a time where Toronto would host Hamilton 5 days later. But so I'll ask you this. On the actual Labor Day, should the home locations keep the same rivalries, but should they alternate home fields? What would you think about that?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, the only reason is because, Glenn mentioned with Saskatchewan how rocking that place was, right? Same thing with Hamilton. Every time I've played there, it's been as close to a playoff atmosphere as you can get. If you want to build up these fan bases, well, what better way to keep these rivalries going but now just involve other people, right? So now when Labor Day comes, it's still a huge deal, but it's even bigger of a deal because you're only getting it once every 2 years as opposed to every single year. So I think it would do a lot for the game and for those teams that aren't getting home games, especially like you look at a team like Toronto now where they've always struggled getting people there. Well, when they're doing so well as they are this year, how about a Labor Day game in Toronto, right? Get those fans involved, get them excited, get them pumped up about this time so that when it comes again in 2 years, then people will be more apt to get tickets and show up and pack that BMO field, right?
Yeah, you know what, guys? I think you can make an argument, and Mike, you just did, for expanding or thinking about this Labor Day weekend in a broader picture and maybe shifting the venues so that you can engage a different type of fan base maybe. I'm going to go the other way, though, only because I think our narrative and I say us, I mean the entire league, coaches, all of it, the narrative that we need to keep trying to fix our game, fix schedules, fix this, fix that, fix rules. I think we got to stop doing that. I really do. This is a fantastic game. We're getting example after example. The game keeps coming through. The players keep coming through and putting on a great show. I love the tradition of the same parks and then the rematches. So I believe that Toronto and Hamilton should be playing again this coming weekend. I can't wait till we get a Maritime team and it's a coast-to-coast battle on Labor Day, and then Montreal and Ottawa play each other the same weekend. We got the matchups across the board with the rematches the next week. I think we should open up on Canada Day with a game in our nation's capital every single year. Those kind of traditions and sort of a chance for us to become big time patriotic in our cities and in our provinces, to me, is really important to take advantage of. So I like the tradition. I don't want to change. I think our game is fantastic. We don't need to change a thing in it. Let's add to these rivalries if we can.
Because when you take a look at it, guys, I mean, look at this Banjo Bowl. The Banjo Bowl actually sold out before the game in Saskatchewan, right? And I know it's a slightly bigger stadium, and some slightly different dynamics in the terms of it's a smaller province, but still, it works. I mean, and Glenn, you've been there. Like, the Banjo Bowl is a big deal. I mean, credit to Troy Westwood and all the things that he said, which maybe weren't that right back in the day, but when he really started something, and the fact that they do flip over and play, your next door neighbor in the next door province, it's a big deal.
Yeah, guys, I don't have any good memories of playing in the Banjo Bowl because we usually go over there and get our butts kicked. So but again, I love that aspect of it. So the Riders now upset Winnipeg, one of the best teams in the league, at home in front of a sellout crowd. It's going to be a sellout, as you mentioned, in Winnipeg. Now the rematch. And the Bombers get a chance to put on a show in front of their crowd. We'll see what the Riders have, but I think it adds to the intrigue and the storylines.
Mike, I remember a day at the Ticats. I can't quite remember the year. It was definitely a 3-win season, and I don't think you were a part of it. But the first win of the 3 came for the Tiger Cats on Labor Day. And then 5 days later, they went to Toronto, and Damon Allen put 45 on them. So, it was tough, right? But again, that Toronto crowd were relishing in the moment, right?
Yeah, and Glenn, you know what? I really like your point where it's, if we're going to do these Labor Day games and hype these Labor Day games up, and for good reason, why not keep that rematch going, right? Like, you're absolutely right to be able to flip that around and have Hamilton go into Toronto and get more of that buzz, right? 2 weeks of that same buzz. Let's do it. And I'm all for that. I like that. And even naming them like they do with the Banjo Bowl, just name that next game, right? Make it another big deal and kind of, springboard off of the Labor Day game into the next one. It's a great idea. And I think, anything to get the fans even more excited during the regular season is awesome.
Stick with the guys wearing green, and this is a very impressive 2-game stretch that they've put together. And I know there were some questions going into this season about the Saskatchewan Roughriders, about their performance. Quarterback goes down early, discipline issues carrying over from last year. But they now beat the Lions and the Bombers back to back. Glenn, is this the most dangerous team in the CFL right now?
It feels like right now it's maybe that team that you don't want to play against in the playoffs kind of thing. I know we're a ways away from the playoffs yet, but they kind of look like that team. You're still going to go on a roller coaster with young quarterbacks, so that's going to be an up and down part of the journey. But I like their defense. I think Anthony Lanier has become an elite pass rusher. He's in that top 5 group to me. So a guy you have to get extra attention to. When you have that guy on your team, you've got a chance to really get good pressure without blitzing, as Mike knows. So, I think they're on their way up, and they're in the conversation now as a legit contender. I'm not sure they're the top dogs on the porch are in that conversation yet, but they're working in that direction.
Mike, the Ticats see the Rough Riders a little bit later in the year. And this could be a situation if the Ticats get a little hot, win a couple of games. Who knows if Bo Levi Mitchell comes back, if Matthew Schultz even gets in there. When they meet later this year, I believe it's in October, it could be a massive game in terms of this playoff thing, crossover, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it could be, but Glenn, like Glenn mentioned, it's this roller coaster, and all these teams are going to go through it, right? And we saw it with the Ticats beating BC, and then going in Toronto and just laying an egg essentially, and Toronto putting up a ton of points against them and looking like Toronto has. When you talk about the most dangerous team, though, I just don't see how you shy away from Toronto, right? Because what they're doing is they're getting it done different ways. Right, every game looks a little bit different for them. Whether it's Javon Leake taking a couple back and setting them up in good territory, whether it's that defense getting a ton of turnovers and really helping out that offense, or it's Chad Kelly and AJ going off and Devaris Daniels catching 5 touchdowns in the past 3 games. It's insane, right? So they're getting it done in a bunch of different ways. So when you look at the most dangerous team, I agree with Glenn where Saskatchewan, yes, they're hot right now, but there are also a lot of teams that go through this, and it just shows that even with the Elks and the Stamps in that last game, any team can beat any team, right? Elks beat Ticats go and beat BC, and then Toronto absolutely kills. So the whole long season, it's still a very long season, but right now when you look at Toronto, they have to be the most dangerous team.
Glenn, do you like the parity?
I do, absolutely, and maybe some of these young quarterbacks are part of the reason for that they're going to have a good game and they're going to have that, bad couple of series in a row where they make some questionable decisions. But, I look at Hamilton, Ottawa, Calgary, Saskatchewan, the crossover comes in there. I agree with Mike. I if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, I think the Bombers are 1 and the Argos are 1A. They're both sort of the top 2 teams in the league. And the BC Lions are in that discussion. But now, the way Toronto is finding other ways, the way Toronto is balanced, I really like their offense and defensive line, so they're good in the trenches. They are, I think, the best team in the league and the team to go after. But that crossover race, guys, wow. That's going to be fun to watch because Hamilton's got to look across at Calgary and got to look at Saskatchewan, and so does Ottawa. That's the fight that's going on right now.
Let's stick with the boys in, what do they call themselves? Cambridge Blue now? Whatever that a new fandangled color that they've come up with. That apparently they're selling a lot of shirts. This is what Mike Hogan tells me, so I'll trust him with this one here. Fair or foul? And Mike, I know as a player you're close to this, so I'll start off with you because I can go back to many players that have come into the league. First year, Casey Printers comes to mind immediately, and how players feel about a guy like Chad Kelly, who is a first-year starter, and now he is the highest-paid player. I guess 3 years at $1.8 million in the league. As a player, do you see that as fair or foul?
Bubs, I see it as fair. If that price keeps going up, then it keeps going up for all the players, right? And I think what's beneficial for this is you look at a situation like Nathan Rourke, who now goes down south and is looking for even a practice roster opportunity, right? What this does is this gets Chad Kelly to stick around for the Argos and let them develop and really build this thing they're trying to build and keep this, this mainstay in Chad Kelly around so they can build around him, right? I think that's huge for them because now they can kind of look to the future and plan that. And, we all know that the quarterback position is the most important in the CFL, right? It usually is in all of football, but the CFL, it just goes to show that how well your quarterback is playing is how well your team is going to do, right? And to be able to keep a guy around like that, keep him happy, make it worth his stay to not have to go entertain some NFL looks, whatever it might be. I think it's awesome. And, anytime a player can get paid like that, I think all the players internally are happy. The only ones that might not be are probably the other quarterbacks saying, hey, what the heck? Where's my money, right? So now that conversation will be coming up in a lot of GM's offices, I know, from here on out.
Yeah.
And Glenn, how does that cross over? I mean, yeah, if you're a guy that's been an experienced guy in the league and all of a sudden, we see how that happens in other sports. I mean, everyone 1 year later, especially the NBA, it's like you got to keep topping this year after year after year. But in the CFL, I mean, there's a tight salary cap.
Yeah, no, Mike's bang on though as far as players are concerned. If you are a player that is jealous because someone beside you or on another team makes more money, you're in it for the wrong reasons. Don't even worry about that. And again, as salaries, more revenues come in and the game continues to be as exciting as it is, you will see all boats floating a little higher because of it. So that's the upside of that. And Nathan Rourke would make more as a starting quarterback in the CFL because he's already proven that he can play, in the CFL and be very successful. But he at 24, 25 years old has got to see this through for at least a year or two because it's life-changing money. It's not going to be a different Nathan Rourke playing down there that played up here, but it's life-changing money. So as you guys know, so you're going to, you gotta take at least a year, maybe two, to see where the tea leaves fall there, see if there's a potential for that. And then there'll be a very good offer for Nathan Rourke on the table in Vancouver if it doesn't work out. So I think this is more than fair for Chad Kelly. It's a great signing. He has proven that he can be a great leader and win games. I mean, what are they at? Hang on, I got the standings. 9 wins, 1 loss. Guys, he's doing his thing.
Well, Glenn, right back at you. Are you surprised that, I don't know how much you knew about it as an insider or not, like if this was coming down, it slapped me in the face. I was really, really surprised that of not only the signing, but the length of the deal. There was all kinds of people saying this guy is doing what he's doing and he's out of here next year to the National Football League. Now, I know there are opportunities, talking to Mike Hogan about the contract, there are opportunities if he does want to leave. So that was a good thing. But the fact that he signed the length of that deal means that there's some type of commitment. And during his press conference, he said, this is my home, which was interesting to me.
Yeah, no, actually, absolutely. And I loved the messaging from his press conference, because he talked about how great the city of Toronto is. He talked about engaging the fan base from the grassroots level. He talked about how the organization and the coaching staff have been so close to his family, and how they've really helped his family sort of, understand Canada and the league, and he's learning, and again, the nuances of the rules of Canadian football, and wants to show fans across the country, and was actually calling out celebrity fans in his press conference saying, hey, you're from Toronto. Who was it? It was The Weeknd or something. You're from Toronto. Get your butt up here to an Argo game. I mean, this is the type of messaging we need across the board. And I was very impressed. Hey, we've fallen into, guys, in the media predicting the future, and often when it becomes the CFL, we're predicting gloom and doom. Whereas we can just say, listen, if he goes to the NFL one day, we'll follow him as a guy who, started his career here, a Warren Moon, a Doug Flutie, a Jeff Garcia. We'll do that. But in the meantime, enjoy what we have in our backyard, and he's a top player that's playing great and signed a big contract. Love it.
And again, to the commitment there, Mike, I think that does show a lot. Do you not agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And, in a league where the player contract commitment isn't very big right now, right? Like it's 1 years over and over and over again. You're starting to see these a little bit longer. And by a little bit longer, I mean 2 years, right? You're starting to see these pop up. But to see a commitment of a quarterback is awesome because the amount of turnover that's happened in the past 2 years of just quarterbacks, right? And, you look at specifically Hamilton, and that's because of how close I was to it. It was Jeremiah, then it was Dane, and then it was Bowley. And that takes time. So now you're just behind the 8 ball trying to learn new things. So to be able to put all your, chips in this Chad Kelly basket, I love it. And for it to be, long term is great because now it's okay. Let's build around this. Let's figure out how we can get, Mike Dinwiddie and Chad Kelly together and get this all going. Or Ryan Dinwiddie, all together.
Mike, can I ask you, because I know you're still coaching at a level right now, coaching DBs and just fresh out of the game. What is it about this guy? I mean, and maybe I'm wrong in saying this. I see some fundamental flaws. I see a guy that rolls left sometimes and throws against his body. I see the footwork maybe isn't the greatest, doesn't step into his throws. Some of the decision makings through 2 interceptions in the game against Hamilton, but yet he gets it done. Like, even his throwing motion seems a little strange. What do you see with him?
Well, he can do that because he is such a talented passer, right? And by talented passer, I don't mean just has a big arm, but he's putting it in good spots for his receivers to catch it. Now, we can't shy away from the fact that A.J. Ouellette and that offensive line are helping him out a ton, right? That is an absolute, right-hand man to a quarterback playing well is a good run game, right? We all know that. And he has some veteran receivers out there that know what they're doing as well, can sit in holes for him, but he's putting it all together, right? And the Argos are rolling together as a team, as an offense, and he's able to make these throws that are, a little off kilter or whatever you want to say, is because he has that arm talent, right? And he's still learning on those reads, like Glen had talked about before. There's still that experience stuff that he's going to have to shake out, and some of those interceptions are evidence of that. But really, as he gets going in this offense and over this 3-year contract, it's only going to get better, right? As long as that run game and A.J. Ouellette and that offensive line still doing what they're doing, it's going to be really hard to stop.
And keep in mind, guys, Bubba, I'll just add, keep in mind that, Doug Flutie took 2 years. Danny McManus took 3 or 4 years. I mean, the only guy that, I can remember in recent memory that kind of hit the field on the fly was Ricky Ray. But, Damon Allen, Matt Dunnigan, the list goes on and on of guys.
Calvillo.
Anthony Calvillo is a great example. 2, 3, 4 years to become great players, and Kelly's already showing that in his first year as a starter.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the guys in stripes. We don't talk about them a lot. Dave Foxcroft, over a couple of decades in the Canadian Football League, a head referee, has done Grey Cups, kind of a local guy in the Hamilton area. He's kind of hanging them up a little bit. He's going to do some mentoring in the command center and that kind of thing. And both you guys played the game at a high level for a very long time and maybe had some good discussions with the guys in stripes. Glenn, you go the furthest back. Who do you rate as that top official in the CFL in your long time in this Canadian Football League?
Well, Mike and I would have been back there with that back judge, and we probably had many conversations about family and friends, and it was all kind of started out as a plan for me to maybe get on his good side in case there's a 50-50 call that I want to get in there. But, I think, first of all, Glen Johnson, just as an analyst watching him handle Grey Cups, he handled the too many men game, Saskatchewan and Montreal in 2009. And these guys do a fantastic job, and Foxcroft's been excellent throughout his career. I think they could use more support, financial and otherwise, when it comes to, timing of penalties, interpretation of penalties, just the execution of it in games to just keep that entertainment level high and not drag the game down if there's a lot of penalty flags. That's not because they're not good refs. It's only because they need, more money invested in not only salaries to create competition, but also in, tablets and camps. And, if we could get 400 or 500 kids that are coming out of youth sports that want to stay in the game and become officials, and we can pick 3 or 4 new ones every year from that group. As you guys know, it's like football. The competition will weed out some of the guys that are struggling. So I can't say enough good things about him. Darren Hackwood does an excellent job running the group, and good for Dave Foxcroft. I wish him the best in the future, and hope that we can use him as a consultant.
Mike, who'd you like back in the day?
Yeah, I love Dave. Like, so Dave was involved even at my time in MAC as well. He would always come down and talk to us. And Glenn, you're right. It's one of those things where no one wants to get into it unless that salary is going to be there, right? That's the bottom line. So if you're looking to get into reffing, the salary has to come up in order to create that competition, in order to, build that base level fundamental portion of it. But yeah, I love Dave. I liked Al Bradbury a lot. Mainly because, and as a player, all you want from explanations of refs and when you're talking with them is just them to lay it out for you. Yes, that was absolutely pass interference when you ran over that guy before the ball came, right? Like, everyone's going to complain about the calls, all that kind of stuff. All you want is a regular conversation or someone to be like, nope, you're wrong. That is a pass interference, right? And Al did a really good job at that. But to be honest, too, is while you're playing, and Glenn, you probably remember this, you don't really know who it is, right? You're so focused on the game, the thing comes, and then the conversation starts, then you realize who it is. And, I just think that building up this referee base level to get some more involved, I think it's a really good idea. But I did like Al Bradbury in my time just because of that straightforward, nope, you're wrong, this is what it was. And I enjoyed that.
No names need to be said here. I underline that. I'll use a highlight pen. But were there guys, Glenn, in your career that you didn't want to see?
Oh yeah, probably. I wouldn't want to name them, and I'm trying to scramble to think of the guys. But there were times when you were so locked in to winning and losing. And it's so important to your livelihood, to your coach's livelihood, to staying on a football team. You get locked in and frustrated at times, and that's what they're there for. That's what they're there to mitigate issues, to make sure that they are moving the game forward. And I don't have anything really bad to say about them. Even when you hear me on telecasts get frustrated with calls and things, I look for consistency. I'm sure all the players and coaches are looking for consistency. The command center has added another sort of twist to it because it can become overwhelming to a point where they're starting to call penalties from there. I think that's a slippery slope we got to be careful with. And again, to me, from my perspective, doing television and the entertainment value of the game, it's got to happen quickly. If it's an offside call, you can do that in 10 seconds and move on, and don't let the game slow down in any way, shape, or form. That's what I think we can work on, but it is not broken. These are great refs in one of the toughest games to officiate on the planet.
No doubt. And Mike, and that's why I say that to you. And again, no names certainly need to be said. Were there guys out there where maybe you might behave differently on the field, or had to be careful of certain things when you were playing compared to some other referees or officials?
Yeah, and we actually would have, like, I guess for lack of a better word, a game plan of that, right? Like, this group of referees likes to call this penalty, right? And we would have stats backed on that. Now, is that, too much information? Probably, right? Who cares about that? Just play the game clean kind of deal. But there are, for sure. There's a couple refs that, if we... again, like Glenn, I won't name names, but for sure there's a few refs that's like, I don't want to see this one. But I do agree, the human element of it is what makes it exciting, right? You don't want to see calls get wrong and then it change a game and livelihoods, all that kind of stuff are flipped around based on an incorrect call, which I think the command center is there to help with, and I really like. But it is a really, really hard thing to do, and I think most players do understand that. Is that it is a very hard game to call, and some are going to get wrong. But I think they're doing a great job. And like I said, the best ones are the ones that are very confident about what they're doing out there and tell you exactly how it is. And, we have a good group of refs right now in the league. And I think, they do try to keep that game going. There's obviously some things that slow it down, but yeah, it is a very tough job to do. And I commend all of them for doing it because it's not easy.
Thanks for that, guys. I think that gives us a real interesting perspective, a real honest perspective on that relationship. Because as both of you would agree, I believe that there's a relationship between the officials and the players. Glenn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. And when you see plays that happen after the whistle blows and they try to break those up. And, I think Ben Major has done a very good job to name a guy that's done well in sort of mitigating the advantage possibilities with pushing and shoving and trying to eliminate it by walking into a huddle and say, look, I'm going to give you both penalties. You both made bad decisions, but it's not going to affect any sort of advantage for any one club or the other. So, I think I like when I see that. I like when I see they manage. They have to make some game-changing calls sometimes because it happens. It's football. You're going to get beat and grab a guy. Mike, I know you and I never did that, but at some point, as a DB, you're going to get beat and grab someone and hope you get away with it. So, and same on the O-line and stuff like that. So these guys have to make some tough decisions, but to me, guys, again, as long as they do it quickly and we move on, you can overcome a penalty. If you're a good football team, you can overcome a penalty or two.
For sure.
Yeah, well, Glenn, there's a couple of alumnus of distinction we've had, and the Ticats have said that you had the good inside pull on the shirt. So I'll leave it at that.
Bubba, that's because my 40 time was forever. So I had to grab every now and then.
Only a penalty if they see it, Glenn. That's it.
Hey guys, again, we talk about the quality of the games that have been played in the last, this last Labor Day weekend. We talk about the rematches, and unfortunately, some of them aren't in particularly rematches. We're looking at Ticats and Red Blacks, Argonauts, Alouettes at Argonauts, Rough Riders at Blue Bombers, and Stampeders at Elks. Mike Daly, your game of the week will be.
Yeah, I think you go back to the Rough Riders and Blue Bombers. I think it was such a good game, in Labor Day that I'm very curious to see how this goes. I know there is a definite hangover for games like that for the winning team, and it's tough to overcome. So I am curious to see if, all what we talked about today, are the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, are they a dangerous team? Can they be able to separate themselves a little bit from that crossover talk, right, and get themselves a little more into that playoff push up top of the West Division? So I'm very curious to see how that one pans out, because I know Winnipeg's going to come back and there's going to be a lot of conversations that are happening this week in that locker room to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, Mike, you had close contact with the man. It doesn't happen very often, but I sense that there may be an angry Zach.
Yeah, and that's not good, right? Zach is what people don't know is Zach, well, maybe they do now, is he's an ultra competitor, right? An ultra competitor. And he's very calm on field and stuff like that. And you wouldn't notice by watching, but I know for a fact that he is going to be angry. He is going to have a chip on his shoulder this entire week, and he can't wait. He's probably almost sad that the 1-game suspension is for this game. Right, it's almost like let's push the 1-game suspension down just 1 week. Let me get a little taste of it, and so I'm very curious to see how they come out, because I know that it'll be a different Winnipeg Blue Bombers team that comes out this week just because of what happened.
Glenn, to continue on that point there just for a second before we get to your game.
Yeah.
Were you surprised with that foul on Zach? Like, I mean, the sort of instant reaction with Robertson, what was he thinking there? Like, surprising.
It was, let's be honest, it was a bad decision by a player, and he's a good player, and he doesn't have a history of this. And, he got caught in the moment. I'm not giving him excuses, but he got caught in the moment. I'm disappointed that the refs on the field didn't see it and disqualify him. I think it was worthy of that. Mike will tell you, too, that when the whistle blows, players relax. And when you relax and then get headbutted, you can seriously hurt yourself, even if it doesn't, or get hurt, even if it doesn't look that bad. And I know there's sort of that argument coming out that, oh, it wasn't that bad. Well, it can be. It's kind of like relaxing and then have a little fender bender. That's when your neck goes out of joint or whatever. So I think they had to come down on this hard. I'm glad that the league has stopped looking at past precedent and not doing what we need to do to curve the behavior. Is curve the behavior by having, a pretty steep penalties, whether it's a fine or if it's egregious and it's wrong and it's after the whistle, it's got to be a full paycheck. It's got to be a suspension of a game. If it's not, the behavior will continue. So let's get hard on this to protect our stars, honestly. And it's enough of the discussion on, well, come on, it's a tough game and people get hit and quarterbacks get hit. No. This was the right call post-game. They should have got it right in-game. They didn't, but they did it quickly post-game. And the one game I think is fair.
So your game of the week will be?
Yeah, well, I love the Saskatchewan-Winnipeg rematch, but I have two things that I'm really looking forward to. That's the one I'm doing, by the way. I got one game this weekend, and it's Sask-Winnipeg, but I want to see Trey Ford play again. I can't wait to see Trey Ford play again. He's worth the price of admission to me. And I think that Hamilton-Ottawa game is a really important game when you're talking crossover races. Hamilton's trying to get rid of Ottawa behind them, and they're trying to move up that ladder in their own division, but also fight against Calgary or Saskatchewan crossing over, depending on how that ends up. So, and I'm not going to take Edmonton out of the discussion yet, but that's a steeper hill to climb. But I like that one too for that reason.
And Mike, the crazy thing is, even though the Tiger Cats have already sealed the deal on the season series, Ottawa, who are coming off a bye week as well too, especially coming off the loss that they had, they're in that must-win situation. I would have to believe that's the messaging there. Yeah,
absolutely. Internally, I mean, for the Ticats, it's been a roller coaster. Like I had mentioned already, right? Edmonton lost, BC win, Toronto loss, right? That's as high one way as you can get and as low the other way as you can get. So I know internally that conversation is going to be like, hey guys, we cannot keep going the way we're going or else we're going to be in a lot of trouble, crossover, whatever it might be. So this Ottawa game, I agree with Glen, it's huge because Ottawa can still catch them. There's still a lot of time left in the season. And if they don't get their act together and Ottawa, starts getting hot again like we saw early on in the season, it's a problem, right? And especially if, Trey Ford can keep getting better and, Edmonton can push and Calgary can push. It's tight for them. So with the Ticats, I think, it is a must win and Ottawa's going to be coming out knowing the exact same for them, right? So it'll be a big one on the schedule for them.
Glenn, we just don't get an opportunity to talk to you all the time. So I'd just like to get your thoughts on the Alouettes. I find them, they're kind of in that Rough Rider mode. Are they a good team? Are they not a good team? I'm not quite sure. Jason Ma's doing a great job, I believe. But your thoughts on that club?
Yeah, I think we're seeing sort of the evolution of Jason Moss, where the outward emotion has sort of been contained. He's play calling and thinking about him and AC. Play calling and thinking about the offense, and then he's got to manage the game. So we're seeing the evolution of him, and I think it's a good thing. Their defense is underrated. Their defense is not getting enough credit for how good they are. And I think whenever you have a good defense, you've got a chance. No matter what team you play, if you can stay within a possession, you can steal any game deep in the fourth quarter. So that's what gives them sort of that hope. We still haven't seen the ceiling of Stanback. We know how good he is, and we've seen good but not hammer Stanback that we are used to. So I think that can still evolve. And Cody can win. He can get you to the West Final. He did that in Saskatchewan.
I still can't believe that Stanback just scored his first touchdown, that beautiful run that he had. I was shocked that was his first touchdown since coming back from, which was a bad injury last year. Hey, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for your unfiltered opinions and giving us some of your experience and that kind of stuff. I think our viewers and our listeners, they thrive on it. That's why they keep coming back to the CFL this week and join us on the Ticats Audio Network. And I know sometimes those conversations want to be expanded and people would like to actually reach out and touch to you. So Mike Daly, if people do want to contact you or hammer you on a point that you actually came across, how can they do so?
Yeah, reach out to me on Twitter. It's at DailyNews8. I'm pretty happy with that Twitter handle too. So keep that going and debate me anything you want to talk about. I love talking football, love talking CFL football. Reach out.
Glenn, have you taken the Dwayne Ford route of having a Twitter handle which he does not monitor?
Well, I've taken the Dwayne Ford route on not monitoring Twitter, if that's what you're we kind of have to have it as sort of promoting and retweeting, features we might have or sideline hits or post-game wraps and things like that. So we want to keep that alive. But hey, I love the passion of the fans. If you curse, you're blocked. That's going to happen. Sorry. But but listen, send in your comments on Twitter. I don't even know what my handle is, to be honest with you, but people can find it. I love when I see you're always cheering for the Riders because you used to play, and the very next tweet is, quit being hard on the Riders because you're overcompensating because you used to play. So I'm still getting that 28 years later since I played for that team. That's like some kids that are tweeting me they weren't even born when I was playing. So anyway, I love it. I love the passion. Keep them coming.
Well, I guess all your highlights are on VHS.
Yeah, exactly. You have to roll the VHS. Now, you're talking about stuff that a lot of people listening to this don't even know. What's a VHS? What are they saying?
That's a great point, guys. Hey, fantastic, guys, and we really do appreciate your time. Hey, folks, if you like what you heard and what you saw on this podcast, certainly write into me and let us know what's going on at the Ticats Audio Network. Like, subscribe, 5-star rating. We always appreciate it. We love bringing it to you. We're not obviously talking about Ticats. We love talking about the Canadian Football League on the Ticats Audio Network, and it's for reasons why we get guys like this, and we certainly appreciate you listening and watching. Again, we are with you once a week. This is the CFL This Week. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. Thanks again to the guys, and thank you to the listeners. We'll catch you on the Ticats Audio Network next week.